Did you know that a little thing called structured programming makes it possible for several or even hundreds of people to work on one program? Better still, it makes it really easy for you to teach your students how to program or code a computer. Want to know how to get started? Up until the mid to late 60s, programmers were creating programs in what looked a lot like spaghetti code, and it became known as that. It was very difficult for another programmer to come along and work with what they had. It was often go-to statements that were causing this, and in 1968, Edsger Dijkstra, who was a very influential computer scientist, put out an open letter called "Go-to Statement Considered Harmful." Now, the Dutchman was completely right. It made it almost impossible for many people to work on the same program. As programs became more complex, there was a real need for this. Almost all the programming that you'll see today is structured programming, certainly the kind of programming that you'll see in the classroom. And that's a good thing. It's also known as modular programming because it can be broken down into bits. What I want to tell you about today are the three main control structures that make up structured programming. They are known as sequence, selection, and iteration. That's how I teach my students. Sequence is a very simple concept. We start that in kindergarten usually and early childhood because it's one thing after the other, making the order very important. And you'll see this often in recipes and that kind of thing. Selection is where the computer has to make a choice. This is always based on data that the computer has, but often that is taken from the end user. For instance, the computer program may ask a question of the user and they'll answer it, and based on that, a choice will be made, a selection in the algorithm. So we have sequence, selection, and iteration, which is just when we repeat things in the program. That has to happen quite a lot. Based on data that the computer has, it may have just obtained it from the user, it will decide whether to repeat or not. It may even repeat forever. That is called an infinite loop. Now there's a fourth control structure in structured programming. It's called recursion. It is very similar to iteration, except the statement is calling itself. I don't figure that it's important enough to teach the younger students about, and often it's only until university that you start to use it. There is more to programming and structured programming in particular, like abstraction, pattern location, and decomposition, but really focus on these three control structures to start with, and your students will have every chance of succeeding, and so will you. Coding isn't a mystical thing. It's really easy to get into if you have a go. Thanks everybody. Have a great week.